Chapter 9 Truths and Gossip, Part 1. So, Pandora asked, a teasing smile on her face when Regulus kept staring at the door after James left. His brain was foggy, muddled with the realization of what he had done. Why would he touch James? He knew it wouldn't end well. Any of it. No, Regulus wasn't going to be able to get any sleep. Not when the image of James staring up at him, lips parted in shock, was seared into his brain. Regulus took a deep breath, forcing his eyes away from the door. Do not even start. James is cute. Pandora, really? Yes, really. Don't you think? He went back out onto the balcony, keeping the door open so that she would know he wasn't shutting her out. He just needed another cigarette. He was glad that he had never done drugs while he was in the ballet. Not now that he knew how easily he could become addicted to things. Alcohol, nicotine. James Potter? Yeah, James was a special type of addiction. Regulus knew it was bad for him. He knew he didn't like it. And yet, he kept letting himself go back. Does it matter? Pandora joined him, and he offered her a cigarette without really even thinking about it. Pandora participated in party culture even less than Regulus did, and she wasn't even close to tipsy. He was pretty sure she hadn't even finished the drink he made her earlier. To me, it does, she said, shaking her head slightly at the offer. Fine, he mumbled, bringing the lighter up and cupping around it so the wind wouldn't blow the light out right away. Fine? She asked. You heard me. Did I? He looked over at her after blowing out a cloud of smoke. Even drunk, he was careful not to be an asshole about blowing smoke in people's face. Don't make me say it, she grinned. Say it. He's objectively beautiful, yes. But that's it. Pandora's jaw dropped, and Regulus struggled to figure out what he said. He just answered her question, so why was her reaction so visceral? What? Reg, holy shit. What? She shook her head, taking a small step back, eyes still widened. I asked you if he was cute. Regulus rolled his eyes. And I told you he was. No, you said something else. No, I didn't. Mm-hmm. What did I say then? You called him beautiful. Oh, fuck off, Regulus said, because there was really no way. He wouldn't. Well, the more he thought about it, the truer it was. Shit. I'm getting Barty and Evan, and we are never talking about this again, Regulus said, putting out the butt of his cigarette in the ashtray. He would need to remember to empty it tomorrow. It was getting full. Yeah, okay. At almost 3 in the morning, Dorca got back to the room, a time that Regulus considered to be suspiciously late. He was still freaking out a little bit, after everything with James and what he had apparently said to Pandora. He was too drunk to deal with it, and for once he wanted to be surrounded by people that would help him, not have to think. Dorca ended up being a great distraction for him, at least for a little while. She tried to sneak in quietly, but they had all heard her unlock the door and waited patiently until she noticed they were all wide awake and looking at her. She looked bashful, not exactly embarrassed, but clearly she had not been planning on getting caught. A long night, Pandora said, a teasing smile on her lips. Not long enough, she said, tossing her back onto the chair and kicking off her shoes. She was still wearing the same clothes as the concert, but she just collapsed in between Regulus and Pandora on one of the beds, not bothering to change. Barty and Evan were on the other bed, and before they had all just been sitting around and talking. and drinking. Regulus had made sure that everyone was drinking. After a moment, Dorca sat up to look at them, clearly a little bit confused. Who are they? You mean Reggie doesn't talk about us? Barty asked with a bit of a pout. Does he talk about me? Dorca countered. He actually doesn't talk to us at all, Evan said. Regulus threw one of the hotel pillows at him, hitting him directly upside the head. They didn't need to have constant communication to be close. They were the kind of friends that didn't always get to see each other, but knew they would always be there. Plus, Regulus updated them on important life experiences. When he broke his wrist, for example, they are Barty and Evan, and I hate them, Regulus said, pointing at each other of them individually. Funny way of showing it, mister. Oh, Barty. Oh, Evan, please do come over right away and let's get drunk. Black. Barty said with a snort. To be fair, that was almost exactly what had happened. He was pretty sure he woke them up, but he didn't dwell too much on the guilt. They had done to him on more than one occasion, and turnabout's fair play. Yeah, I'm still confused about that myself, Evan said, referring to how Regulus had more or less begged them to come drink vodka. Pandora perked up a little bit. She had been slowly drifting off to sleep, but she knew far too much, and now she wanted to spread that information to everyone. Regulus didn't think he would be able to fend off all four of them asking questions, not when he had already cracked and hadn't even noticed it. James were here, she said loudly, her tone suggestive. Barty sat up a bit straighter, his jaw falling and his finger pointing accusingly at Regulus. That's why you invited us here? Because of Potter? No, Regulus lied. It was the exact reason he had invited them over, actually. He was regretting it now. Dorca leaned over and grabbed the bottle, and grabbed a chaser along with it. Apparently, she was done talking about her night, and she motioned for Regulus to start talking. This was his penance for saying that James was beautiful a total of one time. They were never going to let him live it down. Come on, Reggie. You know you want to tell us what happened. He did too. It was the worst thing. He wanted to sit there and gossip about how warm James was, and how he had just needed to know if his face was warm too. He felt the heat emanating off of him, and still he wasn't convinced until the palm of his hand had rested on James's cheek. It was alluringly warm, and Regulus had been shivering for a long time. He just wanted to be bundled up into it, feel himself thaw from the inside out. The feeling was still burned into his hand. He hoped it would never be cold again. He didn't say any of that though. He just shrugged, hoping it distracted from the fact that he was still blushing. Alcohol made him blush. We just smoked. You're smoking again? Evan blurted out before Barty nudged him harshly, probably for changing the subject. Yeah. So, you just smoked? Pandora asked, her head cocked to the side a little bit, eyes all knowing. Yep, Regulus said, his voice a bit choked. A vision of James's eyes appeared in the very front of his mind. Warm brown, with hints of honey and speckles of vanilla. Everything about him was just so warm. Regulus hated it. He's lying, Barty said, singing the words a little bit, proud of himself for catching on. That was all it took. One small accusation had Regulus spilling the whole truth about what happened, unable to censor himself because of all the vodka he had to drink. I hate him, Regulus groaned, falling back onto the bed as dramatically as he possibly could and aggressively pressing his face into the pillow. He's so hot, like literally hot. His body temperature is higher than anybody's should be, like a human fucking furnace. And And he just, ugh, he's so frustrating. Frustrating? Pandora coached. And he likes the stones, Regulus said, as if the fact particularly vexed him. It really did, too. Regulus would like to say that he didn't mean to play music he thought that James would enjoy, but that would be a lie. He figured that James would have the same music taste as Sirius, some of which transferred to Regulus naturally. And he had been right. And he liked the Rolling Stones, and Regulus hated him more for it. It sounds like you like him, Dorca said casually. Regulus froze. He visibly froze. What? No. No, I definitely do not. I hate him. She smiled wide, her eyes a bit lazy, as if she was tired. Okay, sweetheart. Don't patronize me. Dorca was still smiling as she nodded. Okay. They all found this to be incredibly amusing. Regulus's inner turmoil. He knew for a fact he didn't, and could never like James. He was still dead set on hatred, and Regulus hardly ever changed his opinions about people. Once he met someone, that was it. He trusted his instincts, and this was what they were telling him. James would ruin him, and Regulus was too guarded to let him. In the end, that was really all it was. He was scared to let people in. The only people he really trusted were in the room with him, a grand total of four. Five if he counted Sirius, but still. If he were to let James peel back even one more layer, something trivial and small like a favorite color, for example, then the rest would come falling after it. A domino effect. He couldn't afford that. Once, he was stripped to the core and someone knew everything about him. They left. That was the pattern, the common theme with close to everyone he knew. Even Pandora and Dorca didn't know everything about him. He couldn't let them know, or they would live like everyone else. Truthfully, the only people that have always been there were Barty and Evan. All through secondary school, and everything was serious. Being forced into ballet company, adulthood, the bullshit with his parents, literally everything. They were stuck with him, whether they liked it or not. Once the night eventually came to the inevitable declaration of love for friends, Regulus decided it was time to call it a night. Regulus, I fucking love you. You know that? Pandora said, bracing her hands on his shoulders to stay upright. He had sobered up a bit by now, so he ended up being in charge of making sure nobody died on the way to their rooms. And I know you won't say it back, but I know you love me too. He smiled at her, plopping her onto the bed. She had already changed into pajamas earlier, so all she had to do was close her eyes, and she would be out. Thanks, Pandora. She hummed, and let Regulus pull the blanket over her. Dorca was already fast asleep on the other side of the bed, the two of them sharing and giving Regulus his own. After only a couple of minutes, Pandora was sleeping just as peacefully as Dorca, and the room was silent. Regulus sat upright in the bed, looking at the analog clock on the side table. 3:33. Witching hour. I didn't sleep with her. James had just gotten out of bed to open the door because she had been incessantly knocking, and she announced that to probably the entirety of the hotel they were staying in. He had been trying to get some sleep, something that was proving difficult, so he didn't mind the interruption in the slightest. You didn't? He asked, kind of proud. Usually, Marlene was barging into his room to tell him the opposite. She shook her head, a big smile taking over her face. Nope. And this is a good thing, James said, just trying to clarify. Marlene's eyes bulged slightly. Potter, this is a great thing. I mean, she kissed me first. Did I tell you about that? She asked excitedly. plopping onto the bed. James had no choice but to bring his energy up to her level, and he sat down next to her. You did not, Marlene groaned, running her hands on her face. James, she's. I just. I have no words. Genuinely. I feel like you have a lot of words. She nodded. I have so many words. Good kisser? He asked, purposefully teasing her about it. Don't even get me started, she said, making James laugh. No, I'm serious. I will probably never shut up about it. James didn't even need to pump her anymore. She just started talking about Dorca, telling him every single detail of everything they did. James really did not need every detail, but he got them all anyway because when Marlene told the story, she told it completely. She seemed to get everything out that she wanted to. Her cheeks flushed from talking about Dorca for so long. She was glowing, though, really and truly. Marlene always had a bright aura surrounding her, something she carried whenever she went. It had been dulled recently. It was nice to see it coming back. And how was your night? James had been doing everything he could to put Regulus out of his mind and focus solely on Marlene. But the second she asked that, it all just returned to his mind, causing him to blush just as much as Marlene was. She cheered, seeing the bright red on his cheeks. Oh, James, did something happen? Because James was very easily swept off his feet, apparently, he told her about all of the little things. He touched my face. Marlene blinked at him, her smile falling just a little bit from confusion. He touched your face? James nodded, a bit giddy about all of it. Yes, he just. James paused, trying to find the best way to explain it to her, and that was how he decided to act it out. He took off his glasses, handing them to her and not caring if the world was blurry for a couple of minutes. Put this on, but like, skewed, I guess? Skewed? She asked, sliding the frames onto her face. Yeah, crooked, whatever, just put them on. Fuck, Potter, you're blind, she said, looking around at the hotel room through James's eyes. Yeah, I know. He reenacted exactly what Regulus had done to him, resting his hands on her cheek for a long moment. The touch felt less intimate with Marlene. They were just friends, and even doing this felt a little bit weird. He was always touchy with people he loved, but this was something that Regulus had done to him. It was different. As soon as James had his glasses back, he saw the stunned sort of look Marlene had on her face. What? Your hands are so warm, she said, picking one of them up and holding it between her own hands. James took it back, shaking his head at her. That isn't the point. Right. So? So what? What do you think? About what? The touch! Oh, she said with a shrug. I mean, you aren't really my type. James blinked a couple of times, thinking before he spoke for once. Marlene, babes. My love, come on! She laughed, clearly amused with herself and how difficult she was making his life. It sounds like he was drunk. He was, James confirmed. Then, well, you can't really count it. He touched my stomach once, too, when he was drunk. James said that specific memory had altered the chemicals in his brain. He was sure of it. It was the first time Regulus had ever initiated anything between them. And maybe James was making it all up because he liked him, but he was starting to think that Regulus might actually like him back. Which, yeah, it was ridiculous. Regulus still told James he hated him. He seemed to never want to be in the same vicinity as James, unless he was drunk, and that likely would not change. But James tended to enjoy living in his fantasy world, at least in the more quiet hours of the night. I'm seeing a common theme. Yeah, he said with a sigh. Me too. If James was naive, he would say. that he would get over it, that he could just ignore what he felt until it went away. James wasn't naive, though. He was aware of the way his heart fluttered every time he saw Regulus, and the way his whole body responded whenever he spoke. He didn't even care when Regulus was mean to him. There was some masochistic part of him that liked it. So, James did not see himself getting over it anytime soon. However, Regulus was leaving soon. He had sort of forgotten all about the fact that he was not here by choice, that he hadn't decided to spend time on tour with them. The week was coming to an end, and James was a bit confused as how long it already felt. Was it really only 6 days since he first met Regulus? Time worked on a different plane on a tour. He was visiting so many places and traveling so much that he felt like he had lived 7 lifetimes already. Each day was longer than the last, and most of the time it was not in a good way. He already had to be awake in just a couple of hours to travel to Jacksonville. If anything, though, he was looking forward to the break they were going to get. After tomorrow, there wouldn't be a show for another 4 days, which would give James the time he needed to finish the song and give it to Mary. His intention had been to record it in Tampa, but the schedule had really not worked out for him at all. Marlene stayed in his room until the early morning, her alarm going off at the same time Dorca and Pandora were leaving. She invited James to go along and say goodbye, and he dragged himself out of bed. He liked both Dorca and Pandora. It would be rude if he didn't see them off. When he got out there, though, after packing up all of his things, Sirius had already collapsed onto his knees in front of Pandora, doing that fake weeping thing he liked to do. James shook his head a bit in amusement and said his goodbyes in much more civilized manner. Maybe, if he would have had the proper amount of sleep, he would have joined Sirius on the ground. Next time. Before they went on the bus, James tried to catch Regulus's eye. Whether he was avoiding James intentionally or not didn't matter. James did not like it.